It suddenly feels like every creator is going on a live tour or has gone on one. Scott Galloway is the latest, announcing another one last week for his Prof G show. In November, he wrapped up a tour with Kara Swisher for their Pivot podcast. And they're already planning another one for this year.
Scott, we're hitting the road, bringing Pivot live to the people. 7 cities, Toronto, Boston, New York, DC, Chicago, San Francisco, and LA, of course.
When do they sleep?
I have no idea. I'm tired just thinking about that. Then there's Max Klymenko, who is best known on social media for his Career Ladder series. Max Klymenko is taking the idea of a tour and putting it on steroids. Get this, he is visiting 130 countries over the next 2 years. He kicked off this tour in late March.
130 countries is wild. And let me tell you how wild, because I went on went into an internet rabbit hole after you told me that figure to see how it compares to other big tours. So it's not a perfect comparison because I looked up musicians. They were the easiest to find. But obviously, first, I looked up Taylor Swift. She did 56 cities in 21 countries in about a year and a half for the Eras tour. But the record for the most countries visited in a single tour goes to artist Joss Stone, who hit 200 countries during her total world tour, which is a very on-the-nose name. That tour, though, took 5 years, which also blows my mind for different reasons, but also just goes to show how ambitious Max's tour really is. At the same time, though, and this is why it's not a perfect comparison, creators like Max probably operate at a much smaller scale than, say, Joss Stone or Taylor Swift. The sets aren't as extravagant, the props are probably minimal, and the entourage, I would think, is a lot smaller. I mean, I imagine it's probably mostly just Max and his ladder and maybe a small crew. But these creators are also operating on a much smaller budget, most likely, and touring is expensive. It's also time-consuming, and it can really take a physical toll, especially when you're flying all over the world the way that Max is. I mean, I took 51 flights last year, which is scary to think about. I know. Mostly for work, but also for fun, and I am still exhausted now. And plus, while some creators like Scott Galloway are pulling in millions of dollars, unless you're selling out stadiums in every city, it is really hard to imagine that these live tours on their own are super lucrative for most of the creators. So the question, of course, then becomes, why do this? And simply put, live touring is less about the money. It is much more about being in person. It's about meeting fans. It's about creating a stronger bond with audiences. And people just really want to be in person these days. Plus, creators can also get a ton of content and they can book sponsors along the way. So one of the stats we pointed to in our newsletter in an article about how IRL events are the new influencer trips showed that more than half of enterprise brands actually worked with creators on live events last year, and that was up from 34% in 2024. This came from influencer marketing platform Linkia. And it feels like tours like these that Max is going on are probably a natural fit for these brand creator partnerships.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's great for the fans, but I think it's equally as important for the creator to really see the fandom and the community and everything they've built around them. I had a little bit of a flavor of this because one of my favorite parts of my most recent role at The Information was hosting an annual Creator Economy Summit. And I remember actually hosting it virtually during the pandemic and being really shocked at how engaged everyone was, even kind of with the remote format. The chat was, going live. I got so much amazing feedback on it.
I was there. I tuned in from Finland.
Wait, that's so sweet. I didn't even know that. Oh my God. But yeah, I think even in that format, and virtual events can kind of be hit or miss. And I know we all had to sort of do it in the pandemic, but I was pretty blown away. And I think
do you remember virtual happy hours? Sorry, I had to go there.
I never did that. I never
did it either. I couldn't. I could not bring myself to do it.
No, that was a big no. I had a virtual goodbye from CNN and I was there for so long. So that was just sad. It's just not the same when you do it virtually. But it was really the first in-person event that I hosted that really opened my eyes to the fact that I had built a real community around my work. And there was just so much excitement and support for what I was doing. I mean, we blew past the expectations we had for tickets that first year, and we had way too many people for that venue. I'm surprised we didn't get in trouble. But I, knew that in this next chapter, events had to be part of what we did. So very excited to build on this work with you at the Scalable Summit. And you know what? Maybe a live tour is in our future once we grow this show a bit more.
I mean, we have accidentally been on somewhat of a tour already this year with the 1 Billion Followers Summit, with Sundance, with South by. So I think it's probably closer in the future than we would like to imagine.
So true, but that was accidental.
It's true, it's true.
But anyway, for someone like Max, a world tour of the size makes a lot of sense. First of all, his show is dependent on it. It needs to be in person. If you're not familiar with the show, he gets on a physical ladder with someone and he has to guess their career or he has to guess their first job. And formats like these on social media, they're important to kind of create a brand and a reoccurring series around yourself, but they can also get repetitive or feel tired. So that means, bringing in different audiences, putting twists on the format, and also expanding it to new people who haven't seen it. Hence, 130 countries. Here we go. I spoke with Max at Web Summit Qatar earlier this year, where he told me about the tour. And I think the most interesting thing to me was the list of countries he's visiting is really fascinating. I mean, he told me that a big part of the tour is going to underrepresented places to help shine a spotlight on them and the jobs that exist there. Max himself is from the Ukraine, and he's frequently used his platform to highlight the Ukraine war that continues to drag on there, but feels, largely forgotten by the rest of the world. A few examples of places he's going to visit: Tunisia, Latvia, Malta, and Guatemala. He just wrapped up the Caribbean leg of the tour, where he visited Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. And similarly to you, this is making my head spin because I have been on 28 flights since January, including 10 long hauls, and I'm exhausted. I don't have to get on another flight for about 2 weeks, and I'm so happy. By the way, I did ask him if he travels with the ladder, and he told me that he typically sources one locally, which makes a lot of sense because checking a ladder seems like a hassle. I also asked him a little bit about kind of like the origin of why this, and he told me he doesn't like to sit. So like that was a big part of it. It's like he wanted to be standing and do a segment where he was like not just like sitting down, which is not the answer I was expecting.
No, certainly not. I mean, I feel like there has to be more in between not liking to sit to going to making a series where he stands on a ladder guessing people's careers.
There was. So he obviously is very interested in like the economy and jobs, and that's always been something he's interested in. He's worked in tech. He has this really interesting background, and he was like, "Oh, ladder, career ladder. Like, oh, we can do a physical ladder and talk about jobs." No, it is super smart. The very early origins I thought was interesting that he doesn't like to sit.
That's so funny. But yeah, I mean, his show has been so fascinating to watch because I learn about new careers through him. Like there are people who've had careers that I'd never heard of. Another one that I really like is Salary Transparent Street. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
They go around, I think it started in New York, but I think they've gone to other cities since. But they go around asking people how much money they make. And it's really fascinating to, first hear what these people do for a living and then how much money they're making all from it. But to your point about, Max going on this tour to underrepresented countries, I have to say he's not the first to do something like this. Not to harp on Joss Stone, but I got way too into this and really need to share. So when she went on tour, actually went to countries like North Korea, which, by the way, reportedly has the biggest stadium in the world, who knew, as well as Iraq and Yemen in an effort to promote cultural exchange. But I think what sets what Max and other creators are doing apart, and something you started to speak about, is that he's bringing people into the content. And his fans are really dying to get on the ladder and have him guess what they do for a living. So again, it's just a really good way for creators to build community, build connection. And that's what a lot of creators need in this moment right now to stand out, because our feeds are so algorithmically driven, you may not see the same creator twice. I mean, take Max, for example. I didn't know his name when you mentioned that you were going to be interviewing him, but as soon as you showed me a photo or a video, I recognized his face, and then, of course, the ladder, because I had seen it on TikTok. And so a lot of creators just really need to find ways to build around that, and I think going on tour is going to become a bigger part of many of their strategies.
Yeah, we're in this, phase of the creator economy now where people like recognize the format before they recognize the person also, but they often don't know their names. I mean, I often, would host dinners and bring together different people in the creator economy in New York. And one of my icebreakers was like a recent creator that you discovered that you love. And it was a New York crowd. And one of the people at the dinner said, this creator who has this very specific like New York, shtick. And everyone at the table knew exactly who this creator was. Not a single person knew his name, which just is like mind blowing and shows that, especially for short form creators, like you really have to work that much harder to build community and get your name out there. You know, for Max, like it's not just touring, right? He's also using the opportunity to launch a YouTube show. He's also live streaming throughout the tour on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. We just did a deeper dive into live streaming on last week's episode and how creators are using it as a way to stand out. So there you have a case in point, but check out that episode if you missed it last week. And the YouTube series called World of Jobs gives viewers a more behind the scenes look at the jobs that Max is exploring in each country. Earlier this week, he dropped the first episode from Jamaica, where he interviewed a factory worker at the Red Stripe Beer Factory, a chef specializing in jerk chicken, and an Olympic bobsleigh star. So a very eclectic mix there. But it just shows you, right? Like, between the live streaming strategy and the long form YouTube series, it's really emblematic of the different ways that short form creators are expanding. We've seen Alex Earl also launch, a beauty series on YouTube as well, because there's just only so much you can do with short form, both content wise and monetization wise. So with this tour, Max is really maximizing for content and for business opportunities.
So you know what I really want to know?
Yes.
I want to know how often Max is correct when he's guessing people's careers on the career ladder.
Oh, that's a good question.
Did you ask him
The
that?
other thing he told me is that he doesn't post every single episode that he tapes. So he will only pick the
Why?
best ones. I think he just wants to pick the best ones. And he tapes so much content. I mean, think about us. Like, we don't post every single thing that we record, right?
It's true.
So that's two questions. The ones he posts, maybe he posts a lot that he doesn't guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I've definitely seen ones that end before we find out if he has guessed correctly or not, but I don't know if he then has like a longer form YouTube video or something else somewhere where he reveals the actual career.
He's pretty good at it. And you'd have to imagine, like, after doing so many of these, you must have a strategy. The other piece that he's expanded is as he's doing brand partnerships. Like, I saw that he did one recently with the CEO of LinkedIn. Like, obviously he knows his job, so he had to guess what his very first job was. Spoiler, it was a tennis instructor. I just watched that one on my feed.
So interesting.